행복한 명작 읽기.
Around the World in 80 Days. Chapter 1. The Wager. In 1872, in the city of London, many prominent gentlemen gathered at the Reform Club. One of these gentlemen was Phileas Fogg. Fogg was a handsome man with a silver beard. Although he was well known around the club, people knew very little about Fogg's private life. His only daily activities were reading newspapers and playing a card game called whist. Phileas Fogg lived alone in a mansion. He employed a single butler. The only requirement of Fogg's butler was perfect promptness and regularity in his work. In fact, on October 2nd, Fogg fired his current butler because he had brought him his shaving water at 84 degrees Fahrenheit rather than 86. On this late morning, Fogg was waiting for a new butler to arrive between 11 and half past. Mr. Fogg sat perfectly still in his chair as there was a knock at the door. A man entered and introduced himself as Jean Passepartout. He was a Frenchman from Paris. He had been a singer, a horse rider, and a tightrope walker in a circus. 5 years ago, he had come to England to seek a quiet life as a butler. "Mr. Passepartout," said Phileas Fogg, "do you know that I require my butler to always be on time?"
"Yes, monsieur,"
Passepartout replied. "Very well, then. From this moment, you are my new butler." Then Phileas Fogg left without a word. Passepartout inspected the house. It was perfectly clean and orderly. He found a card describing his daily duties. The list explained everything he must do from the time Mr. Fogg woke up at 8 until he went to bed at midnight. Meanwhile, Fogg went to the Reform Club. After having his meals and reading several newspapers, Phileas Fogg met his usual whist partners. As they began playing, Thomas Flanagan asked, "Have you heard about the robbery?"
"Yes,"
replied Stuart.
"The bank is going to lose that money."
"I disagree," replied Ralph. "Skilled detectives have been sent all around the world to catch the robber. No country is safe for him."
"That's silly,"
said Stuart.
"A man can now go around it 10 times more quickly than 100 years ago."
"So you think the thief will get away just because he can circle the world in 3 months?" chided Flanagan. "In 80 days, said Fogg.
"That's true,"
agreed John Sullivan.
"It only takes 80 days now that Rothal and Allahabad in India are connected by railway."
Sullivan continued.
"The newspaper stated it like this.
London to Suez by train and steamboat, 7 days. Suez to Bombay by steamboat, 13 days. Bombay to Calcutta by train, 3 days. Calcutta to Hong Kong by steamboat, 13 days. Hong Kong to Yokohama by steamboat, 6 days. Yokohama to San Francisco by steamboat, 22 days. San Francisco to New York by train, 7 days. New York to London by steamboat and train, 9 days. Total, 80 days.
"Yes, 80 days, but that doesn't take into account bad weather, shipwrecks, and train accidents,"
said Stuart. "It's all included," returned Phileas Fogg, playing his hand at whist.
"It's absurd. I'd be willing to wager £4,000 on it,"
cried Stuart. "I have 20,000 in a savings account that I will wager," Fogg said calmly. Are you joking? Asked members of the group. "An Englishman does not joke about such wagers." Fogg replied, very seriously, "I will bet the 20,000 against anyone who wishes. Do you accept?"
We accept,
replied the group of men.
We will each contribute £4,000 to match your 20,000.
Good, said Phileas Fogg. The train leaves for Dover at 9:15. I will take it this evening. Then Fogg wrote them a cheque for the money. He had only wagered half of his £40,000 fortune because he knew that he would need the other half to complete the trip around the world. Back at home, Passepartout was studying his list of responsibilities. He was surprised when Fogg walked in at an unscheduled time. Fogg went to his bedroom and called for his butler. Passepartout, I want you to put 2 shirts and 3 pairs of socks in a small bag for me. Do the same for yourself. We'll buy new clothes as we go. We're going to catch a train in 10 minutes.
Where are we going, monsieur?
Asked Passepartout. We are going around the world in 80 days. We don't have a minute to lose, replied Fogg. Passepartout didn't know what to say. He did as his master instructed. By 8 o'clock, the bags were packed. Phileas Fogg had a copy of Bradshaw's Continental Railway and Steamboat Guide under his arm. He opened one of the bags and put in a large roll of money that was enough to take them anywhere. Take care of this bag, said Fogg. There are £20,000 in there. Passepartout almost dropped the bag when he heard how much money he was carrying. Then they took a taxi to the train station. Chapter 2. Detective Fix. A few days later, London's chief of police was sitting in his office at 9 o'clock in the evening. Suddenly, the chief was handed a telegraph that read, Suez, Egypt to London. Rowan, Chief of Police, Scotland Yard. I've found the bank robber, Phileas Fogg. Quickly send an arrest warrant to Bombay. The telegraph was sent by a British detective named Fix. Mr. Fix had been sent to Suez to hunt for the thief. He was a small, nervous man, with bright eyes and eyebrows that were always twitching up and down. Fix had been waiting at the docks of Suez for several days. He expected the criminal to look like an honest man. In his opinion, the greatest robbers always looked like honest folks. When the Mongolia came into the port, Fix looked carefully at the face of each person getting off the ship. Suddenly, a man came up to him and asked if he knew where he could get a passport stamped. Fix looked at the passport and asked, Is it yours?
No, it's my master's,
said the man. The picture of Phileas Fogg matched the description of the thief exactly. Where is your master now? Asked Fix.
He's on board the Mongolia.
Fix thought quickly. He knew he would have to get Fogg off the ship and keep him in Suez to catch him. Your master will have to bring this passport to the consulate to be stamped in person.
I'll go and get him,
said Passepartout. Fix quickly went to the English consul's office and said, I believe the thief is a passenger on the Mongolia. I need to keep him here until I can get the arrest warrant from London. Can you detain him?
No, I have no right to detain him until an arrest warrant is issued,
said the consul. At that moment, Fogg and Passepartout entered the office. Fix remained unnoticed at the back of the room. Accepting Fogg's passport, the consul told him,
You know a stamp is unnecessary. No passport is required for British citizens traveling in Egypt or India.
I know, replied Fogg, but I wish to have proof of my travels.
Very well,
said the consul, and he stamped Fogg's passport. Back on the Mongolia, Fogg updated his journal. On that day, Friday, October 9th, he noted his arrival in Suez, and that he had neither gained nor lost any time. Passepartout was enjoying the scenery on the dock. Well, my friend, said Mr. Fix, walking up to him, were you able to get your passport stamped all right?
Yes, the passport is fine,
replied Passepartout.
but we're traveling so fast that I feel like I'm journeying through a dream.
"Why are you in such a hurry?" asked Mr. Fix.
I'm not in a hurry,
said Passepartout.
but my master is.
"But where is your master going?" asked Fix.
Always straight ahead. He is going around the world in 80 days.
exclaimed Passepartout.
He says it's on a wager, but I think something else is going on.
"Yes, your master sounds like quite a character. Is he rich?"
He's carrying a large amount of cash with him, and he's not afraid to spend it.
All of this information only convinced Fix that Fogg was the thief. Fix returned to the consul's office and asked the consul to send a telegraph to the chief of police. "I'm going to follow this rogue to India, which is English ground. Once that warrant arrives in Bombay, I'll be able to arrest him politely with the warrant in my hand," thought the detective. During the voyage, Phileas stayed in the saloon playing whist. Meanwhile, Passepartout was enjoying a meal in the forward cabin when Mr. Fix approached him again. While meeting, Fix and Passepartout became friends. By the time the Mongolia reached Aden, they were 15 hours ahead of schedule, and by the time they reached Bombay on October 20th, they'd gained 2 days. Phileas Fogg calmly entered this information in his journal. Chapter 3. Across India. It was 4:30 when the Mongolia landed and its passengers went ashore. Fogg ordered Passepartout to be at the train station by 8 p.m. to catch the train to Calcutta. Then he went to the British consulate to get his passport stamped. Mr. Fix quickly went to the Bombay police headquarters. There he asked if his arrest warrant had arrived yet, but it hadn't arrived yet. Fix realized that he would just have to keep following Fogg and Passepartout until the warrant arrived. Passepartout decided to look around Bombay. He followed a parade that was marching through the streets. Soon after, the Frenchman entered a beautiful pagoda at the top of Malabar Hill. He didn't know Christians couldn't enter Indian temples, or that even Indians must remove their shoes before going inside. Suddenly, Passepartout was knocked to the floor. He found himself being beaten by 3 angry priests. They shouted and tore off his shoes, but Passepartout quickly jumped up and ran out of the pagoda as fast as he could. When Passepartout arrived at the train station, he was shoeless, hatless, and without the package of clothes Fogg had sent him to purchase. From a hidden corner, Mr. Fix listened to Passepartout tell Phileas Fogg what had happened at the pagoda. Now Fogg's servant had committed an offense on Indian land. He would be able to arrest them in Calcutta and hold them until the warrant arrived. At 8 a.m. on 22nd October, the train stopped 15 miles past Rothal. They were in the middle of a very small village.
"Passengers will get out here,"
announced the conductor. Passepartout rushed out to find out the reason and came back crying.
Monsieur Fogg, the railway has ended.
They soon learned that the railway wasn't finished. There was a gap of 50 miles between where the train had stopped and Allahabad, where the line picked up again. By this time, the other passengers were beginning to leave for Allahabad by wagon, horse, and mule. Fogg also searched the village for transport, but found nothing. Passepartout had more luck, announcing,
I think I found a way to get to Allahabad. There's an elephant that belongs to an Indian near here.
The elephant's name was Keone. Mr. Fogg decided he would rent it. Fogg made several generous offers, but the owner refused them all. Then he offered to buy the animal for £2,000. It was too much money for the man to refuse. Fogg then hired a local Parsi man to guide them and the elephant to Allahabad. This part of India was not under British control. They occasionally came across bands of ferocious Indians who shook their fists and shouted angrily. That night, they stayed in an old cabin on the edge of the jungle. At 6 the next morning, they resumed their journey. At 4 p.m., the elephant stopped